Good morning, everybody. I wanted to go over the stuff that you looked at yesterday in your interactive notebook, starting with the root words. There were 7 this time. Each unit will have roughly that same amount. So I think we end up with 70 or 80 root words by the end of the term. And so the idea was you were supposed to essentially take the root word, put it in the middle, and do some stuff to help you kind of remember it. You will be quizzed on these. So the first one that I'm sure we all knew was bio, right? The root word bio, think biography, autobiography, biology, means life. And it's a story potentially about life. And biology, of course, is an area of science that studies living things. That's what we're going to be doing this year. So hopefully you get a chance to do the rest of these. That would have taken you to a reading. Again, should be review about the scientific method. And I don't expect you to memorize it step for step. I just want you to get a general idea of how science works, the logic of science. Now, knowing that science is based on our observations, it's important to recognize that our observations themselves can be skewed. One of the reasons we have to do so much repeating of science work, right, or work that others have done, is to account for the fact that our perception plays a role. So you do a couple of activities to help you understand that and think about that. And one of them was the inquiry cube. And of course, the cube that we wanted you to tell us what was on the bottom and you were supposed to post on Padlet, right, looked like this. So this was the top of the opposite side of what you were looking at, right? So hopefully you can look at, you'll be able to look at other people Padlets that show what they thought was on the bottom of this based off of their observations, based off of their inferences. Also, we had you look at some information about observations versus inferences, which of course related here. Observations, what you can see, taste, touch, right? We know what our senses are, so they have to come from the senses, and that's what science, all science is based in empirical evidence, right? Evidence you gather yourself, or evidence, I suppose, that others gather as well. And that evidence is based on observations. But very quickly, right, our minds fill in the gaps, and so we end up doing a lot of inferring, which is a proposed reason for our observations. And just to make sure we understand the difference between the two, right, if we look at this picture here, we can say, okay, there's a couple observations, like there's some writing on the window, there's a fish in a tank, and there's a cat and a bird, right? Those are observations. Those are things we can see. Now, inferences, right? If we look at this cat here, he's got a couple of wooden legs, we can infer that it has the wooden legs because it's tried to eat this fish, and upon closer notice, we see that that's a piranha. So obviously the joke is, right, that every time the fish goes in there to try and eat this fish, the cat goes in there trying to eat this fish, it turns out to be the opposite, right? The fish is taking bites out of the cat. Okay, so a couple things, and you maybe had something different. And then, right, again, sort of recognizing these as important things, right? A prompt here that we gave you, here's something you can observe, right? And we look at it, what are a couple of observations, and then what could you infer? So the observations, we've got a couple sets of tracks coming together, and we only have one set of tracks leaving, right? So an argument could be made that a couple animals came together, right? This is one of my inference, and one of them was eaten by the other and only one walked away, Maybe you came up with something like that. And we had to take some notes on a video about perception, and then we had you do the checks lab and post your information. Hopefully, again, right, on the discussion board, you were able to see sort of what other people's stories came up with, what they came up with for stories. What I want you to be thinking about here is why, even though you were both given the same evidence, right, the same checks, why did you come up with different stories about what those checks were telling you, right? So the point here, if we had two take-home messages, number one, science is based in observation. But number two, we need to be wary a little bit of that observation because not that it's faulty, but we very quickly fill in the gaps with things like inferences. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we have to be aware of our perceptions and our biases and how they play into our inferences. All right. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you soon.